Hey everyone, welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love bold and beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. All right, let's dive right in.
The day at Forrester Creations started with a sense of tension in the air, as if the walls were holding their breath for a revelation that would shake the very foundations of the Spencer Forrester Finnegan families. It all started innocently enough in the bright, sunlit conference room where Bridget Forrester had called a meeting that promised to be anything but ordinary. The employees and family members came in one by one, exchanging nervous glances. Whispers of speculation spread like static electricity. The usual hum of creative energy was replaced by a charged silence that felt almost suffocating. Everyone knew that whatever Bridget was about to say would affect everyone and hurt their hearts. Luna Nozawa sat uncomfortably at the edge of the long, polished table, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were pale. Her eyes darted nervously from Bridget to the faces of the Spencer men, Bill and Liam, and then to Finn, who was sitting at the far end of the table, looking stoic but tense, his jaw clenched in a way that showed how many conflicting emotions were going on behind his calm exterior. Bridget cleared her throat, and the delicate sound cut through the silence like a knife. The room leaned in as if it were being pulled into the words she was going to say, and every heartbeat echoed with excitement. Bridget began carefully, her voice soft but firm. "Luna, I have your test results and they confirm that you are pregnant." There was a collective gasp, and the word pregnant hit like a wave, sending ripples through the room and causing people to gasp and murmur in shock. For a moment, everyone was frozen in place. Luna's hands shot to her mouth, and her eyes widened. She felt the whole world turn on the axis of Bridget's words. She couldn't believe it, but she was also excited since she had always wanted a child and never thought she would get the news in such a public and charged situation. The initial wave of reactions was immediate and multifaceted. Bill Spencer's face morphed from surprise to a cautious, calculating grin, his mind racing with possibilities and implications of the child's existence. While Liam's expression darkened with a mixture of fear and protectiveness, his instincts honed by years of being caught between family loyalties and personal desire, and Finn's eyes, sharp and unwavering, betrayed the deep current of concern he carried, knowing that Luna's happiness could potentially come at a cost none of them had yet grasped. Bridget's hands were steady as she continued, her words deliberate and heavy with consequence. "There's more than one baby, twins actually, but one of the babies is not Will's." The room seemed to collapse inward, time slowing, the words reverberating like a thunderclap across the collective consciousness of everyone present, each syllable a hammer striking against fragile certainties. And for a heartbeat, the only sound was the distant hum of the air conditioning and the quiet, almost imperceptible intake of breath from those around the table. Luna's eyes grew huge, and her body froze as if it were frozen in crystal. A wave of confusion, guilt, and dread washed over her as she tried to understand Bridget's revelation. The implications were immediate, deep, and completely destabilizing. This revelation meant that the web of secrets, lies, and manipulations that had been simmering beneath the surface was about to explode into chaos. The Spencer family, pillars of power and influence in Los Angeles, felt the earthquake of betrayal ripple through their ranks. Bill's gaze shifted from Luna to Liam, his expression calculating, aware that the dynamics of paternity, legacy, and family loyalty were suddenly destabilized, while Liam's reaction was visceral, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a burgeoning anger that threatened to overwhelm him, his protective instincts for his family colliding with the raw hurt that came from knowing the child he thought was his own might be someone else's. And in that moment, the entire room seemed to hold its collective breath, suspended between revelation and reaction. Bridget, retaining her cool appearance, pressed on. "I know this is a lot to take in, and I know it changes everything, but you all need to understand honesty is crucial here, now more than ever. Luna, you need to be truthful about who the father of the other child is." Luna's lips trembled, and for a moment, it seemed as if she might collapse under the weight of expectation, her gaze dropping to the polished surface of the table, hands gripping the edge, knuckles white, heart hammering, as if she could physically feel the crushing force of the eyes of the room upon her. And yet she also felt an odd surge of defiance, a flicker of the fierce independence that had always defined her, telling her that she would not let fear dictate her actions, that she would stand, however precariously, and reveal the truth on her own terms. Finn leaned in a little and said in a calm but tense voice, "Luna, we need to know the truth. The baby's life and all of ours depends on it." There was an almost imperceptible pause, and in that pregnant silence, the emotional and moral weight of the situation seemed to thrum like a living thing, heavy and insistent. The other family members also had to deal with their feelings. Steffi Forrester's jaw tightened, and a mix of empathy and concern flickered in her eyes as she thought about Luna's situation, and what it would mean for Will, the child she had always hoped would grow up in a loving and stable environment. Brooke Logan's face showed a mix of anger, worry, and maternal instinct. She wanted to protect her family, but also knew how fragile their ties were. Ridge, who was always the mediator, struggled with how to balance loyalty to both family and friends while trying to figure out the truth in the midst of the storm of revelations. Even the minor players in the room felt the tension as a tangible, almost suffocating force, their roles in the unfolding drama suddenly becoming very clear. Luna finally raised her gaze, meeting Bridget's eyes, and in that quiet but seismic moment, she spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "The other baby, the one who's not Will's, it's not because of anyone you know, or anyone who's been involved in this family drama, it's complicated." Her words were hesitant, careful, but they carried the weight of confession, the acknowledgement of secrets that had long simmered beneath the surface, and yet they did nothing to diminish the shock in the room, for everyone understood that complicated, in this context, was a euphemism for a reality that would have seismic consequences for the Spencer and Forrester clans. Bill's mind raced, already calculating the ramifications for his legacy, for his control over Will, for the potential leverage he might gain or lose depending on how the truth unfolded, while Liam's internal turmoil mirrored the storm raging outside the conference room windows, the struggle between rage, betrayal, and the instinct to protect his family leaving him momentarily paralyzed. Finn, meanwhile, silently wrestled with a deeply personal conflict. The instinct to support Luna, the responsibility to protect life, and the gnawing sense that the fragile peace he had built with Steffi, with the Spencer family, and even with his own conscience, might be irrevocably shattered by the revelations now unfurling like a storm. Bridget, understanding the need to direct the subject cautiously, continued on. "Luna, we need more than half-truths. For everyone here, for Will, and for yourself, clarity is crucial. This youngster, these twins, they deserve honesty. And you deserve assistance, but first we need the truth." The room seemed to lean in, the weight of expectation pressing down on Luna as if every eye, every breath, every heartbeat were a tangible force, and for a moment, she felt as if she might crack under the pressure. Yet in that same instant, a weird peace crept over her, a sense of resolution born from the awareness that the truth, however heartbreaking, would finally allow the healing and reconciliation that she had long desired for, but had never dared to imagine possible. She gulped, her voice dry, and eventually whispered, "The other twin, the one who's not Will's. I made a mistake I can't undo. But I want to be honest now, and I want to do right by both babies." Her words hung in the air like a fragile glass sculpture, beautiful and vulnerable, yet perilously close to shattering under the weight of scrutiny. Bill's lips pressed into a thin line, his calculating mind already assessing the damage control required, while Liam's eyes filled with a mix of hurt, betrayal, and reluctant understanding, the raw emotional complexity of the moment leaving him shaken but alert, acutely aware that the dynamics of love, loyalty, and family were shifting beneath his feet. Finn, as always, was the quiet anchor, his presence steady but deeply charged with emotion, aware that Luna's choice to reveal part of the truth, however late, was both a risk and a step toward redemption, and he felt a surge of protective instinct rise within him, tempered by the knowledge that his role in this drama was far from passive, that his actions and choices would reverberate through multiple lives and shape the trajectory of the families intertwined in ways no one could yet predict. The talk that followed was a delicate ballet of inquiries, clarifications, and emotional navigation, with Bridget steering the debate with cautious precision, balancing the need for truth with compassion, her job as both a doctor and a mediator now more vital than ever. She detailed the medical aspects of Luna's pregnancy, explaining the findings with clinical clarity, emphasizing the importance of health and prenatal care, but never allowing the clinical detachment to overshadow the human stakes involved, the emotional, familial, and moral ramifications that now loomed large. Each revelation, each confirmation, seemed to send tremors through the room. Will's reaction, though he was only a child, became a point of discussion, the adults grappling with how to shield him from trauma while preparing him for the complexities of blended family dynamics. Steffi's maternal instincts surged, her protective nature compelling her to ensure that both children would be welcomed and cared for, even as she navigated the treacherous waters of emotional entanglement and loyalty. Brooke's maternal energy mixed with her innate ability to read the room, anticipating the fallout and readying herself to mediate, console, and confront in equal measure. Ridge, ever the strategic thinker, assessed the implications for Forrester creations, for familial alliances, and for his own moral compass, trying to balance the human and corporate consequences with the precision of a tightrope walker. As the meeting progressed, tensions fluctuated between fragile hope and simmering conflict. Liam struggled to reconcile his love for Will with the reality that the child he had believed to be his was only half connected by blood. Wrestling with questions of identity, fairness, and justice, Bill contemplated the long game, calculating how this revelation could be leveraged, fearing exposure but also sensing an opportunity to reinforce his influence over both Luna and the Spencer legacy. Finn maintained a calm yet resolute presence, aware that every word, gesture, and decision in this room would carry consequences far beyond the immediate drama, affecting the moral and emotional development of the children, the cohesion of the family, and the potential for reconciliation and forgiveness in a landscape fraught with deceit and pain. Luna, meantime, experienced a tornado of emotions: fear, shame, relief, and an unusual sense of release, the admittance of truth, however partial, alleviating some of the crushing burden she had borne in secret. She understood that the road ahead would be plagued with problems, that the path to acceptance, understanding, and possibly even forgiveness would be long and unexpected. Yet for the first time in weeks, she felt a glimpse of agency, a chance to create the narrative rather than be swept along by it. The conversation eventually pivoted toward practical matters: the medical care of the twins, arrangements for monitoring the pregnancy, discussions of custody, and the long-term implications for both children. But even these logistical considerations were suffused with emotion, every decision layered with ethical, familial, and emotional complexity. Bridget, as always, served as the calm center amid the storm, offering advice, reassurance, and clarity. Her twin role as medical expert and valued family confidant enabled her to navigate the hazardous waters of revelation, emotion, and moral obligation with grace and precision. As the meeting drew to a close, the atmosphere remained tense but charged with the potential for resolution. Luna had taken the first step toward truth. The Spencer and Forrester families had been confronted with a reality that would forever alter their dynamics, and the stakes, emotional, ethical, and familial, had never been higher. The room emptied slowly, each member buried in thought, wrestling with the implications of Bridget's declaration, the reverberations of which would be felt across family gatherings, professional interactions, and personal relationships for months, possibly years, to come. Bill lingered briefly, eyes fixed on Luna with a mixture of calculation and concern, while Liam's gaze followed Finn, a silent acknowledgement passing between them that the days ahead would demand courage, patience, and perhaps the kind of moral clarity that was rarely required in such tangled family dramas. Steffi kept close to Finn, whispering words of support to Luna, bolstering the delicate links of devotion and trust that had begun to grow under upheaval. Brooke exchanged a long, knowing glance with Ridge, both silently realizing that this revelation was merely the beginning of a long and arduous journey for their family, one that would test their patience, empathy, and resilience in ways they could not predict. And Luna, standing at the center of the storm she had both created and endured, felt the weight of responsibility settle over her like a mantle, knowing that the lives of her twins, the trust of her family, and the fragile threads of redemption, love, and reconciliation now rested in her hands, her heart racing with the enormity of what lay ahead. Yet for the first time, feeling a sense of determination, resolve, and the faint glimmer of hope that even amidst chaos and heartbreak, truth and courage could pave the way for a future that was, if not simple or easy, at least honest, real, and profoundly human. As the room slowly settled into an uneasy silence after Bridget's shocking announcement that Luna was carrying twins, one of whom was not Will's, the subtle undercurrents of fear, anticipation, and barely restrained anger rippled through every corner of Forrester Creations, each person caught in the gravitational pull of revelation and consequence, the polished walls and gleaming glass surfaces somehow amplifying every emotional tremor, as though the very building had become a sentient witness to the drama unfolding within, and Luna herself felt as if she were suspended in a void, the weight of judgment, expectation, and responsibility pressing down upon her chest with a force that left her momentarily breathless, her mind a whirlwind of memories, regrets, and fleeting hopes, each memory of her past mistakes colliding violently with the knowledge that the choices she had made would not only affect her, but also ripple outward to touch the lives of her family in ways she could never undo. And yet, despite the fear and shame threatening to overwhelm her, there was a flicker of something new, determination, perhaps, or a desperate need for redemption, that allowed her to meet the stares of the Spencer men with a trembling but resolute courage, even as her eyes briefly sought refuge in Finn's steady gaze, knowing that in him at least, there was a measure of unwavering support, though she also recognized the complicated storm of emotions that must be swirling in his heart. Love, protectiveness, moral conflict, and the silent knowledge that Luna's secret, once fully revealed, could place him in an impossible position of choosing between his daughter's well-being, the life of an unborn child, and the fragile trust of Steffi, whose own heart had already been stretched thin by years of loss, heartbreak, and the constant balancing of family loyalty and personal desire. Bill Spencer, meanwhile, was already plotting silently, his mind racing with the ramifications of this revelation for his legacy, for the delicate balance of power he had maintained between the Spencer and Forrester clans, and for the way in which the twins, one his grandson, one a mysterious unknown, could serve as both a wedge and a leverage point in the complex network of alliances, rivalries, and unspoken grudges that characterized his family life. And as he shifted his gaze between Liam and Luna, his expression a mask of mild surprise tinged with subtle calculation, he wondered how much truth would be revealed, what manipulations could still be orchestrated, and whether the exposure of the other twins' paternity might serve his long-term strategy, even as a faint pang of paternal concern crept into his consciousness, reminding him that regardless of strategy, a child's life was now irrevocably entwined with his own ambitions, moral code, and family responsibility. Liam, on the other hand, could barely maintain his composure, the revelation tearing through him like a physical blow, a mixture of anger, betrayal, fear, and protectiveness colliding in his chest so violently that it left him momentarily paralyzed, his mind a tumultuous storm of what-ifs, all of them centering on Will, whom he had always viewed as the innocent anchor in his often chaotic life. And now the reality that only one of the twins would share Will's bloodline sent waves of guilt and despair through him, as he silently vowed to protect both children regardless of biology, even as he grappled with the sense that the very foundation of his family's trust had been shaken to its core, leaving him feeling vulnerable, uncertain, and achingly aware that navigating the fallout would require every ounce of emotional and strategic fortitude he possessed. Steffi Forrester, too, felt herself caught in the eye of the storm, her heart torn between empathy for Luna's predicament, concern for her beloved Finn, and a deep, maternal instinct for the innocent children whose lives were now at stake, and she could feel the tension coiling like a living thing in the room, each glance, each movement, each carefully measured word carrying an emotional charge that threatened to ignite into confrontation at any moment, forcing her to navigate carefully between compassion and caution, between speaking up and observing, between defending innocence and confronting deception, all while silently preparing for the possibility that the unraveling of Luna's secret might spark not only family discord but long-lasting ramifications for trust, love, and loyalty across the intertwined Spencer and Forrester dynasties. Bridget, ever the calm center, could sense the fragility in each person's response, understanding that every phrase she uttered, every clarification she offered, had the potential to either soothe or ignite the fragile tempers simmering just beneath the surface. And so she continued with painstaking care, outlining the medical details, emphasizing the importance of prenatal care, and gently guiding Luna to speak honestly, all the while aware that the emotional stakes were as high as the biological ones, that the room was charged not just with fear and shock, but with moral and ethical tension that demanded careful handling. For one misstep could escalate into conflict, fracture loyalties, and shatter the already fragile bonds that held the family together. Luna, for her part, struggled to find the words, the internal dialogue raging as past mistakes collided with her desire to do right by the twins, to salvage trust where it had been broken, and to ensure that neither child would suffer the consequences of deception and secrecy. And in a moment of raw vulnerability, she admitted to the complexity of her situation, hinting at the other twins' father without fully disclosing identity, creating a tension in the room that was almost unbearable. The silence that followed her hesitant confession pressing down on everyone present with a weight that made breathing seem difficult, forcing each person to confront their own emotions, assumptions, and potential actions in response to the revelation. Rich Forrester, observing quietly from the side, mentally assessed the room like a general on a battlefield, noting the shifting alliances, the emotional vulnerabilities, and the subtle cues that suggested where future conflicts might arise, while Brooke Logan, sensing the need to intercede before tempers flared beyond control, prepared herself to mediate, to console, and to confront as needed, knowing full well that the fallout from Bridget's announcement would ripple far beyond the walls of the conference room and into every corner of family life, business dealings, and personal relationships, forcing a recalibration of trust, loyalty, and responsibility that would likely redefine interactions for months to come. As the discussion continued, the conversation oscillated between practical considerations, the health and care of the twins, the emotional impact on Will, potential legal ramifications, and planning for the future, and the deeply personal, with each adult silently weighing their own biases, past grievances, and future expectations, the room a crucible in which the pressures of family, morality, and love collided with the raw reality of human frailty, mistakes, and the complex intertwining of lives bound by blood, choice, and circumstance. Finn, as the silent anchor in this storm, wrestled internally with his own conflicting desires. To support Luna fully, to protect the unborn children, to maintain Steffi's trust, and to navigate the delicate moral landscape that now required him to reconcile honesty, loyalty, and emotional responsibility in ways that could either cement or fracture the fragile network of relationships surrounding him, all while keeping a careful watch on Liam, whose simmering anger and protective instincts threatened to boil over at any moment, and on Bill, whose subtle manipulations and strategic calculations added yet another layer of complexity to an already emotionally charged scene. As the hours passed, each revelation, clarification, and pause layered upon the next, creating an atmosphere so thick with anticipation, dread, and cautious hope that the very air seemed to vibrate with tension. The interconnected web of personal stakes, moral dilemmas, and familial obligations converging in a way that left no one untouched, no heart untested, and no future path clearly discernible. And yet through it all, a fragile thread of potential redemption and reconciliation remained, tied to the willingness of each individual to confront truth, exercise empathy, and navigate the storm of emotion with a balance of courage, patience, and moral clarity that could either salvage the family's bonds or shatter them irreparably, leaving the twins, Will, Luna, Finn, and the extended Spencer Forrester clan to contend with the consequences of choices made, secrets revealed, and truths finally brought to light in a way that would resonate through generations, challenging notions of love, loyalty, parenthood, and the very definition of family in ways that only the intricate, high-stakes world of the bold and the beautiful could render so vividly, painfully, and unforgettably real.